Hello, I'm Kathy Casimir McLean, the author of Black Man Listen, a biography of the life of my paternal grandfather, Ralph Casimir. I want to share some ideas and reflections about the process of writing this biography. If the subject of your biography is living, it is important to seek their permission to write about their life. In my case, this was not so, but I did discuss my intentions with my father and one of my aunts. I set about this project by considering what I already knew and what I needed to find out. I knew that he had been a staunch Garveyite, involved in local politics, and a poet. However, to establish the facts, I was aware that I would have to do some extensive research. I had some experience of academic research, but I am not a historian. A biography should be rooted in facts and information collected from reliable sources. I began my research with the J.R. Ralph Casimir collection, which at that point was held in the basement of the Rosa Public Library. There I found the books that he had donated from his private collection. There were collections of magazines and other written materials that he had bound together. These included his compilation of the Book of Negro Poets. There were also letters from which I was able to copy anthologies of his own poetry and copies of the first anthologies of the Dominican poets he had collected and published. What I found added to my knowledge of his interests in literature and writing poetry, and those he had corresponded with, including Langston Hughes and Sylvia Pankhurst. There were also newspaper articles, including the serialized version of A Pan-African in Dominica by Tony Martin, a professor of Wellesley University College in the USA. This had been published by the Dominica Chronicle in 1990. My next port of call was a visit to the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture in Harlem, New York, where my grandfather's documents, the J.R.R. Casimir Papers, 1919 to 1981, are held. There, I found a wealth of material related to Casimir's UNIA activities, his interests in Black history, his poetry, and rare publications he had collected. Much of this was already in the public domain via Martin's writings and the Marcus Garvey UNIA papers. To tell my story of my grandfather's life, I felt it important to contextualize it historically, socially, and culturally in order to establish what life in Dominica had been like when he was growing up, and to look at the wider world picture of the time. I read books about the Pan-African movement, about Marcus Garvey's life from different perspectives, his published speeches and accounts of the experiences of the soldiers of the British West Indian Regiment during the First World War. I was very conscious that I needed to get the facts right and to ensure reliability and validity by not just trusting one source. I read anything I could find about education in Dominica and the wider Caribbean in the early 20th century. I also searched for any first-hand accounts of life in Dominica at that time. I bore in mind when reading that there's always an element of bias in historical writing. What is remembered or erased is never accidental. Historical writing is never apolitical. Hence, it was important to explore a range of materials. Despite all this, I felt that there was something missing from the picture that I had. While speaking to my father about my research, he casually mentioned that he had a file with some more personal family papers. This was pure gold, as amongst it all was a diary that Casimir had kept up to 1925. There were also letters from his mother and his brother. Throughout the documents I came across, there were references to him having been a councillor and involved in other local political activity. However, I could find little concrete detail. My next step was to research newspapers published during the relevant period. I found not only articles relating to Casimir's political activities, but also the context in which they took place and how they were received by those in power. I was able to find newspaper archives online and spent much of lockdown in 2020 reading ancient Dominican newspapers. It was those newspapers that saved me from making a grave mistake. The report of the first emancipation celebrations which my grandfather was involved in were reported in the UNIA papers, a highly respectable source, as taking place on 1st and 2nd August 1921. In my subsequent reading, I read accounts of Casimir's activities in Trinidad, where he was helping to build the UNIA chapters there between June and mid-August 1921. Obviously, he could not have been in two places at once. I searched through the Dominican newspaper reports for 1921 and found a report of emancipation celebrations, but they were not those described in the UNIA papers. I then decided to look at the same period in 1920, and there I found a substantial article giving an account of the first celebrations led by the Dominica UNIA division. I could then be assured of the correct date in which it had taken place. I also interviewed my aunts, my siblings, and his friends who were still alive to acquire a rounded view of the man from a range of perspectives. Lennox Honeychurch, who knew and collaborated with my grandfather, was a font of knowledge on Dominica's social history. Although my first chapter takes the form of a very personal account of my relationship with my grandfather, I subsequently tried to maintain an objective stance by writing in the third person and to give a balanced perspective presenting both his strengths and flaws with nuance and context. When I was considering how to write the biography, I took a mixed approach, alternating between life events and themes. I tried to be sensitive in my reporting, bearing in mind that although my subject was dead, I had to take into consideration the ethics of how the biography might affect his family and his legacy. Thank you for listening.
Hi, I'm Benjabite. What's the story? What do you think is happening in this picture? Create your own story idea and drop it in the comments below. Hi, I'm Benjabite. What's the story? What do you think is happening in this picture? Create your own story idea and drop it in the comments below.
Hi, hello. My name is Natasha Eloy Labad, and I am a author, and I am here to introduce Gabby and the Little Go-Getters, and this is a story, of course, inspired by Gabriella, the main character, Gabby. And this book is really written for all the enterprising kids out there with great ideas. We want to be able to encourage young persons to continue to ask their questions and find resources and people who can help them to not only channel their creativity, but also help them to continue to be enterprising and make their projects really successful by using resources in and around their community. And of course, we want to continue to inspire young persons through all our book series. So, this is the first of what we anticipate will be a six-part series. So, stay tuned. So I am going to do a quick excerpt from the book Gabby and the Little Go-Getters. Okay, here goes. Mom, I'm so excited for school. And guess what? I have another idea for a new project. Wanna hear what it is? Of course I do. Gabby, what's going on in that cute little head of yours? Asked her mom. Lots of fun stuff, smirks Gabby. I want to build a fun farm for all the animals I've seen in your garden using things around our house and community, like a birdhouse, butterfly spa, bee house, and even a house for the baby agoutis sneaking your sweet potatoes. Oh, wow, Gabby. That's such a great idea and fun new project. But how will you do all these things by yourself? Gabby put on her thinking cap and jumped to her feet. I can ask my friends to help me build the animal houses. We will be the coolest crew of builders. Mommy, can you help me by calling the moms of my friends Jezreel, Aliyah, and cousin KK? We have lots of houses to build. And a little house for the agoutis, laughed Mom. Are you sure the agouti house is a good idea? I may not have a garden left after your little agoutis come for lunch in my potato patch. Oh, Mom, you're right. Let's just start with the butterflies, bees, and birds. There you have it. I hope you stay tuned, and I'm looking forward to sharing more of the adventures of Gabby and the little go getters. Thank you.
Greetings. I am Bernadette Vidal, also known as Bernadette Ambo Vidal, and I hail from the most beautiful community on the western coast of the nature island of Dominica, Salisbury. I am a teacher by profession, a creative by nature. I enjoy singing, dancing, reading, writing, and drawing. Allow me to share with you a little bit about my writing journey and how I became a published author. When I began teaching in 1995, I carried my passions with me. In the academic year 2001 2002, I collated a book of stories written by students of my class of 46. Each student had a featured piece in the book. I illustrated the cover myself. I decided to continue this practice with students at the other schools that I taught, and created these little books as a project with my classes over the years. I did the same with my Young Writers Club, a club that I initiated in 2019. In 2021, when I began my journey as a freelancer, my siblings encouraged me to write a book and publish it. I listened. After doing a lot of research, I stumbled upon Amazon KDP and decided to try self-publishing my books. I was successful. Since then, I have published 4 books via Amazon KDP. I have done all the illustrations myself, including the covers. The first was done using Canva tools, and the others were illustrated using my varied hand-drawn and colored creations. In addition to these storybooks, I also wrote 68 stories for the Cheetah Decodable Early Readers series, a project I undertook as a contracted independent author and literacy specialist for Cheetah Toys and More, LLC. These are also available on Amazon under the name of the company owner and my name, Bernadette Vidal, listed as co-author. I invite you to purchase my little books, which cater to children from ages 4 to 12. Just search for books by Bernadette Vidal on Amazon. My stories rhyme and are simple, relatable, and teach valuable lessons. They can also be used by teachers and parents as teaching resources. The last couple books contain teaching tools such as a glossary, as well as content that may complement certain aspects of the school curriculum. Thank you for allowing me to share my writing journey with you. Remember to check out my author's page on Amazon. You may also reach out to me at the address on the screen.
All right, so you want to know how to make readers root for your protagonist? Let's get into it. Caribbean style, with a little island breeze and storytelling magic. First things first, your protagonist doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, if they're too flawless, readers will bounce faster than a beach ball in a hurricane. Give them flaws. Maybe your hero is stubborn, quick-tempered, or a little too proud. That's cool, because flaws make characters feel real. And when a character feels real, readers from Kingston to Cuba can see a bit of themselves on every page. Now let's talk about goals. If your character's just drifting like a coconut on the tide, nobody's going to care. Give them something to chase, something big, something scary, something that matters. Maybe they want to save their little sister, or become the first in the village to go to university, or even just find the truth about who they are. The bigger the dream, the harder we root for them. But don't stop there. Show us what's at stake. Let us feel the heat. If your protagonist fails, what will they lose? Their home, a loved one, their sense of self. When I know what it costs, I'm right there sweating with them, page after page. Now this part is pure Caribbean flavor. Let your protagonist love something or someone. Maybe it's their grandmother's Sunday stew, or the sound of the steel pan at sunset, or their best friend since childhood. A little bit of love, a little bit of longing, and suddenly, your character's heart is beating right alongside mine. Here's another tip. Let your protagonist mess up. Nobody gets it right the first time, and that's okay. When your character stumbles, apologizes, or learns from their mistakes, that's when readers connect. Because we've all been there, right? Finally, sprinkle in some voice. Let your protagonist sound like they belong. If you're writing for a Caribbean crowd, let their words, their rhythm, their humor reflect the region. A little island slang, a taste of local culture, and suddenly your readers feel right at home. So to sum up flaws, goals, stakes, love, growth, and a voice that rings true. That's how you get readers cheering for your protagonist from the very first page. Now go write that hero your readers will never forget.
My name is Trish Cook, and I'm an author and a playwright. My mum and dad were born in Dominica. My mum was born in La Roche, and my dad was born in Wesley, and I was born in Bradford in England. Though Dominica has always been a very big part of my life and a very big part of my work. I seem to have the heart of Dominica in most of the things that I write. My first book, which was Mummy Sugar Falling Down, was written in 1988. And this book is about a little girl who travels from Dominica, or is sent for by her mum to live in England with her. And this little girl, Elizabeth, is very scared, and she's not sure what to expect when she arrives. And she has a very big imagination. And the imagination that she has actually makes her able to talk to vegetables and to fruit that grow in her garden. And when she gets to England, she's not expecting to see them, but she's so pleased that her friends are there in the cupboard, in her mum's kitchen cupboard too. So this is my very first book. This was written at the same time as my very first play, which was published in this book, First Run 2. And my first play, Backstreet Mammy, is very different to the book, in that it's about a teenage pregnancy and a young black girl who gets pregnant and then has to decide whether she's going to keep the baby or not. And I've written that with a Caribbean family, and I say Caribbean family because it's not specific to Dominica, although the heart of it is Dominican. The language that I use, or how I've written it down, is written in a very general Caribbean dialect, so it's not specific to any island as such. But in this play, I've got a play in this book which is Black and Asian women writers. The play in here is called Running Dream, and Running Dream was written specifically with the Dominican dialect in mind, and I've used French Creole in there and the Yorkshire accent as well. And it's about three sisters. One sister who was born in Dominica and stayed in Dominica. The second sister who was born in Dominica then was sent for and travelled to England. And the third sister was born in England, like myself. And this play explores the dynamics between those three sisters. So while I was writing children's books, I was also very much involved in the theatre and writing plays as well, and still am. My last piece of theatre work was the National Theatre. I did some additional writing for a play called Alterations, which was written by Michael Bensets, and that was great fun. The original work that I have done of recent has been pantomimes for the Theatre Royal Stratford East, and also has written Christmas show for Talawa Theatre Company, so a lot of family shows. Back on to children's books. This one, So Much, is very much, I think, the most popular of my children's books, and it's a picture book about a baby who has lots of family visitors that come to give the baby so much love and attention, and I'm hoping to make that into a musical very, very soon. Watch this space. The Magic Callaloo is my latest book, and this one is a kind of retelling of the Rapunzel story, but with a difference. So instead of the long blonde hair that we're familiar with the Rapunzel story, we've got a Rapunzel with a big afro, and her means of escape is very different to getting out of the tower, as in the original. In this story, I've looked a little bit at Black history and how the slaves were able to escape in a particular way by using their hair patterns in their cane hair. And then with this book, Look Back, this was published by Polly Patello in Papillot Press, and this was a book that is about the Tibolon, which is very particular to some of the Caribbean islands, Dominica especially, because my dad used to tell me all about the Tibolon. It was a creature that I didn't know whether it existed or it didn't exist, but it did inspire me to write that book. So that's a little bit about myself and the work that I do. It's a very quick summary. I hope you've enjoyed listening. Thank you. My name's Trish Cook, and I'm reading an excerpt from my book, Mummy's Sugar Falling Down. The chapter I'm reading from is called Hide and Peep. Reuben was 6, like Elizabeth. Nico was 5. They'd been playing hide and seek when they found out about the party. Reuben and Nico had been hiding behind the settee when they overheard their father, Isaac, and Elizabeth's mother talking grown-up talk. "You should make a party for your birthday," Isaac had said, rubbing his hands together and shaking his hips. "We got to show we still have it in us to move the bones and shake a leg." "Move the bones and shake a leg?" Nico had whispered, puzzled, and Reuben had shook his leg, kicking over their aunt's new vase, sending it to the ground with a crash. "Look how the children break the vase you just give me for my birthday," Elizabeth's mother yelled. "What you two children doing there?" their father asked. "I fed up telling all you. When big people talking, go and play elsewhere." The children had been there long enough to hear the word party. They didn't need to hear anything else. Elizabeth saw them as they were being warned out of the sitting room. "We know a secret," Reuben boasted. "Secret? What secret?" Elizabeth asked, looking back at the closed door leading to the forbidden room. "Have Uncle Isaac and Mammy told you a secret?" "Not exactly," said Reuben, playing a tune on the wall with his fingers and showing off. "You don't know anything," Elizabeth said. "Yes, we do. Your Mammy having..." Nico and Reuben looked at each other. "A party," they said, jumping up and down. A week later, on the night of the party, Elizabeth felt a little put out that her mother still hadn't mentioned anything to her. After all, Elizabeth had been hoping for a new outfit. Elizabeth sat on her mother's bed, watching her take out her curlers. "Something bothering you, Elizabeth?" her mother asked. Reuben and Nico say you're having a party, is true? Those children, her mother sighed. Yes, I'm having a party. For big people? Elizabeth asked, picking up her mother's lipstick and pretending to put some on her lips. Yes, for big people. Elizabeth picked up a curler and wrapped a plait around it. What about me? She asked, puckering up her lips and posing in front of the mirror. What about you? Her mother asked. If it's big people party, where are you going to go? In your bed, Elizabeth's mother said, taking the curler from Elizabeth's tired fingers and lifting her into the second bedroom. But I want to come to party, Elizabeth moaned. Party is for big people and bed, she said, pointing to the inviting bed, is for children. Elizabeth climbed in and snuggled under the duvet. Good night, Mummy, she said, kissing her mother. Downstairs, the kitchen was alive with chatter. Everybody was talking about the party. What you wearing? Black Pudding asked Chicken. Oh, something tasteful. I seasoned since last night. And you? Chicken asked Black Pudding. Oh, the same old skin. Chicken got in with the gossip. I hear even salad dressing, lettuce having a new crinkle cut, and cucumber coming in small squares. Why? Look like everybody have them new outfit but me, Black Pudding sulked. I hear Ram Goat bringing his brother, Chicken said excitedly. Who's that? His name Curry Goat. He hot stuff. He look just like his brother. Yes? Black Pudding asked. Spitting image, like peas in a pod. They come in? Black Pudding asked curiously. Who? Chicken wondered. Peas. They come in. Oh, them. Well, I'm not sure, you know. I hear one of them have black eye. Black eye? Peas? Black Pudding said disbelievingly. Yes, the stories say they were fighting. Oh, Peas and who was fighting? Black Pudding asked. Red Beans. Both of them wanted to bring rice to the party. Rice say them too fresh. And Chicken went on with the gossip. The kitchen was bubbling with excitement as they all prepared for the party. Green Banana looked ripe and was trying to tone down the yellow with green food colouring. Plantain told her not to bother, but she wouldn't listen. Go natural, like me, Plantain said, parading herself like a fashion model in front of Green Banana. Curry Goat like the natural look, she said, blushing a slight shade of pink. When Elizabeth woke up, it was not because of the music or the sound of Uncle Isaac's laugh bellowing up the stairs. It was because her legs ached. Something heavy must have been placed on them during the night. She tried to stretch her toes but couldn't. Then it moved, the heavy lump. It brushed briskly against her leg. She would have screamed had she not heard a voice coming from the bristly lump. Move over. You're taking up all the room. Then there were two lumps moving closer to her, and on either side of her head were feet. Reuben and Nico, she sighed. They hadn't been allowed to go to the party either. She brushed her fingers on the heel of her foot and giggled into the sheet. The foot moved away, so she did it again. Stop it, Moonface, Reuben croaked. Or else, Elizabeth teased. Or else I will set Nico on you, Reuben joked. Nico turned in his sleep. Hi, Tizzy. You were asleep when we came. We tried to wake you. He yawned. Just then they heard somebody outside on the landing. Enjoy yourself. I'm just going to check on the children. The light went on. The three bodies did not move. Look like angel in the night, but devil in the day, Elizabeth's mother sang. She switched off the light. The children listened to the heavy footsteps going back down the steps. Then Elizabeth got out of bed and switched the light on. You know, everybody at the party tonight but us, she said, leaning on the wall. I want to go and peep, see what all the fuss is about. We're not allowed, Nico said. You scared? Elizabeth said. No. Then come on, she said, holding on to her pyjama bottoms and reaching up to the door handle. Reuben and Nico did not move. Look like I'll have to go without you. Look so, Nico said, turning over and going back to sleep. Elizabeth put her head out into the hallway to see if anybody was there. Wait for me, I come in, Reuben called, and he jumped out of bed. Shh, Elizabeth said, turning back. Don't make us get catch.
Media platforms for the 2-hour CTD experience, which celebrates the achievements of Dominicans. Connecting the dots. Tune in this Saturday, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. We will solidify the connection.
Welcome to Author Showcase, part of the Write-Tukubuli Literary Virtual Festival. And today we have my good friend and mentor, former journalist and author, Nicole Georges Bennett. Hey, Nicole.
Hi, Sam. Thank you so much for having me on. And allow me to introduce your host, Sam George.
Thank you so much, Nicole. I haven't hosted in a while, so forgive me.
I know. On to be on this side of the fence, eh?
Yes. All right, so let's jump right in, Nicole. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
All right. And so before we actually begin talking about your writing, I want to ask you this about the Write-Tukubuli Literary Festival. How did that even come about in the first place? I know you're one of the planners behind this initiative, which I commend you and I guess commend myself too, because full disclosure, I'm also a part of the planning committee. But I think that this is so important, especially for our Dominican writers. And as I said in the showcase you did with me, that I want to see Dominican writing be known around the world.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we are known for bouillon music and siwo and all of that. I want to see our literary work be also known globally. So thank you for putting this together, or helping us put this together, and giving our authors a chance to showcase themselves. Hopefully, this leads to not just recognition, but also name recognition for some, or if not all, of our writers. So I just wanted to put that out there before we get into today's author showcase.
Well, thank you, Sam. And of course, I'm just a small cog in the whole machinery that has put this together. I believe that it sort of came up organically, as in conversations with myself and you and other writers from other different groups representing Dominican writers and authors. And we were sort of lamenting that there didn't seem to be that much of an online presence for Dominican writers, a place where they could showcase their work or learn how to hone and develop their skills. So we decided, I think that the Dominica Cultural Division had done something similar in terms of a virtual literary festival, maybe last year or the year before. I thought that went really well, and commend, the government for putting that together. But there didn't seem to be a follow-up festival.
Right.
So we decided that we would reach out to other writing groups and see if they were interested in collaborating and putting this together. And I reached out to Celia Sorrendo at Nature Isle Literary Festival, also to Roy Sanford at Write-Tukubuli Writers. We also reached out to Leslie at the Dominican Poetic Circle. Sam and myself represent Piton Noir, which is Dominica's sci-fi fantasy collective. And yeah, everybody was on board, and we thought that it would be great to try and pool all of our writers together, and also to encourage Dominicans who are interested in writing, the kids, the youth, to have a place where they could showcase their writing, whether they're published or not.
Yes.
Write-Tukubuli Virtual Literary Festival was born. I presume.
Yes. And so I think those are the kinds of initiatives that we need to pursue. And, it doesn't matter whether you are published or whether you are unpublished. Mm-hmm. I think it'll help writers to, begin that journey. And I believe earlier we talked about, whether it's been too late. No. As long as you are alive, and
yes,
even if you have challenges with your eyesight, that is still not even an excuse. Because I certainly know of a certain writer who this doesn't stop him. So,
of course, I want to say hi to Dr. Steinberg Henry.
Yeah, I don't think so. That being said, I don't believe that there are excuses we can make anymore. And with technology, it is so much easier to do research. It's so much easier to get to do what you need to do. You no longer need to use a pen
and the platforms that exist now.
Exactly.
That you can showcase the work from.
And you can publish. There's just so many avenues and less excuses.
Yes,
anyway,
and hopefully all of that will come up in the festival, because we're going to be doing workshops, we're going to be doing panel discussions, dealing with timely topics like this.
Right. So so that's why we don't want to take up too much of the time showcasing your work. I just wanted to highlight the significance of your contribution to the festival before we get into that. So getting into the author showcase, I mentioned that you are a former journalist. So my first question is, given your experience as a journalist, both in print and on radio, how has that influenced your writing?
So, because as a journalist, one of the first things you learn to do is to write news stories, to research, to write articles. I've worked in newspaper, magazine, radio, and television, all of which require a different tweak on your writing skill set. And fiction writing for me has always been the most freeing and the most creative that I could be, because it literally is a product of what I call the Holy Spirit and inspiration and creativity coming together. But my technical background in journalism writing helps me to keep things very focused, very structured, and research based, I should say. So, so journalism definitely has provided me the foundation from which to launch my fiction writing career.
Okay. And so sticking with the journalism background for a moment, do you prefer writing short form article style, or long form novels, and why?
So because of journalism, and particularly because my Bachelor of Arts degree is in broadcast journalism, so which I earned from what is now called the Toronto Metropolitan University. Back in my day, it was Ryerson. The formats that you write for radio scripts have to be precise, and they have to be 30 seconds to a minute at most. So coming out of that tradition, I am definitely a short story writer. Novels are a real challenge for me. So when I write long form, I think they would be more classified as novelettes as versus novels. So you're not going to get Stephen King, The Stand, type of major works. George R.R. Martin's Game of Thrones series, looks like a coffee table.
Right.
When you put them together. So yeah, you're not going to get
100,000 words. Yes.
Yeah. So you're not going to get that from me. So So my novels to be hopefully context heavy, but not necessarily long in format.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's pretty interesting, because I think everyone, looks for an author to write a full novel. But
there are novels in that they're full. I mean, hopefully, they begin at the beginning and they end at the ending, and there's a climax. Right. All of the other elements that a novel should have, it's just that mine are like this.
Well,
they're beach reads.
Right. Yeah. Right, exactly.
You're going on a plane, you probably finish them in the 5-hour, 6-7 hour flight,
Right. Yeah, that's actually probably a good strategy, especially nowadays. People have so much time and yet so little time at the same time, because technology is making it easier for us to do certain things, or we can automate certain things, but we still have less time to read a book. And so, yeah, you're probably right. Maybe that's the way writing and reading is going to go, as we go along. You are a person of faith.
Yes.
And so I want to ask you, how do you balance writing, say, on a faith-based theme, and writing sci-fi fantasy? Do you see them as naturally, or a natural connection between them?
That's a good question. Not necessarily. From my perspective, there isn't necessarily a natural connection, but it is just that whatever I write, or whichever genre I choose to write in, is informed by my faith. So I have written in different genres. I don't just write in sci-fi fantasy. It is my preferred genre, but I've also done murder mysteries. I've done one book of poetry. I've done a children's book. I've written romance. So I've written, I've pretty much explored as many genres as I could. My faith informs my decisions in terms of my character growth and development. I have lots of themes of redemption, rejuvenation, themes of forgiveness. So those faith-based decisions that I make in my novels are because of ultimately God's love for mankind and how that filters through my life. So it does go through, I guess, by osmosis, goes into my novels, regardless of whether the setting is a planet, a colony, what you call those things, a colony, that's set on Mars, or if it's set on a small island like Dominica, or in a work environment. There's not necessarily, I think, a natural connection between faith, except in Christian writing and Christian novels with the other genres, but definitely faith can inform the decisions you make as an author when you're writing in these other genres.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
That was a long answer to a very short question.
No. That's perfectly fine. I think it's great. I think that, you have to get the chance to explain what you're trying to say, because
thank you.
We don't want to be out of context, but definitely that's very good. That's a very good way of putting it. And I think it's also encouraging to other writers of faith not to be too stringent on themselves. I think that just because you're a person of faith, which I am also, doesn't mean you cannot write outside. You don't have to write Christian content only. You can write a sci-fi novel. You can write. And as long as I always believe that what you do is always about the motive, what it is you are trying to accomplish.
But what if, I have a question for you. What if you're dealing with a character who is a villain or a criminal, and perhaps the things that they're doing are very much against your faith beliefs? How do you then deal with a character who, for example, maybe uses profanity, or there's, or does something that's graphically violent? How do you deal with satisfying your requirements as a Christian when you're writing somebody who's very anti-Christian?
Right. I think that is that's a very good question. Yeah, and I appreciate it. So I think that if a writer is writing about a character that is doing something I don't believe, unless that is you, I don't think it should hurt you, or hurt your faith, or damage your faith, because you are saying what someone else is doing.
Okay.
Because not only that, if you are writing that particular character with the eyes of our Savior Jesus, then you are not necessarily focusing on what they're doing, but the end. Is there redemption in the end? And are you trying to say that? Because let's face it, none of us as human beings are perfect. We are all flawed. We've all sinned and come short of the glory of God. And we will continue to do so until Christ returns. Right. So, and there are many people, many of us, who will do things that most people will consider evil. But that doesn't mean that there is no redemption, because, the Lord says that just come as you are. Doesn't matter what you've done, And as the word says, there's only one. Christ said there's only one sin that's unforgivable. So I don't believe, and I may be wrong, and since I'm not a theologian or I didn't go to Bible school or any of that, I may be wrong, but I don't believe writing a character that's doing wickedness, which men do, which we do as human beings. I don't believe that that should affect you. It may hurt your witness a little bit, because some people might say, oh, well, he's a Christian, or he's a pastor, or he's whatever. Why is he writing that way? Why is he writing some graphic things? And I would say, yes, you have to be careful. You have to try to keep your words to a certain way. Like I wouldn't write profanity, or at least not overt profanity. I wouldn't do that, but certain people will.
Yeah.
Because you don't want people to miss the message. I guess ultimately is if whatever it is you're doing will glorify the Lord. I think that's what it really boils down to. It took me a long way to come to that, but I think that's yeah. But yeah, so let's continue with you for a moment. You mentioned a couple of titles that you've written. You mentioned your children's book. That is a faith-based book. So tell us a little bit about that.
So Terry the Bunny, We Don't Believe in the Same Things, is the last work that I've produced. I tend to have about 4 or 5 projects on the go at the same time, but this one I really felt a resonance with and a connection to, because it was based off of sort of a real life circumstance. So Terry the Bunny is about a little bunny who lives in Sunshine Village in the Caribbean, and he and his best friend Purple Turtle, Dominicans will know where I'm talking about, have a fight when they discover that they don't have the same faith traditions or religious beliefs. And so this whole story is Terry trying to work out, can he be friends with someone who doesn't believe the same things that he does? And between his gentle guidance from his mother, Mama Mabel, and his own working things out, he comes to a solution at the end. And the gist of it is to try to teach children who live in a multicultural society how to engage with their friends and with people of other faiths in a way that is respectful of the other person's beliefs, but still holding true to your own. And that was really important for me as a parent, raising children in Toronto in a very multicultural, multi-faith environment and society, and running up against fellow students who didn't believe what they believed, and in teachers who didn't believe what they did, and principals who didn't believe what they believed, and how they could, with respect, explain their beliefs and hold true and strong to their faith traditions that we and my husband had taught them, while providing the other person with the space to explain their side of things and what their perspectives were. So all of that to say, it is, I think, a very important lesson, but couched in this very cute, charming story for kids.
Right. Well, I mean, who doesn't love a bunny, right? Yeah. So I see you how you're wearing your Dominican hero or heroine.
It's a Super Dominica. I've got to give a shout out to Albert Pierre, who is the illustrator and the creative mind and genius behind this T-shirt. I also have to say that I have had this T-shirt for about 10 years, and as you can see, the colors are still. I'm going to give you a little. Colors are still very bright.
Wow.
So great quality.
That speaks to the quality of the work, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. And
another Dominican, skilled Dominican, right? Yeah. So wearing your T-shirt, obviously, and we've mentioned you're a Dominican, but how does being Dominican or growing up in Dominica, how does that influence your writing, especially when you're writing fiction or when you're writing science fiction, fantasy? How does that play?
Well, Caribbean people have a funny way of describing their islands as not a real place. Because, there's so many things that occur on islands that seem outrageous to the rest of the world, that you almost feel like you're already living in a fantasy world.
Planet Dominica, right?
When you come out of the islands and you live in North America or in Europe, and you think back to, wow, I left fertile, lush green mountains with fruits on every tree, beaches and rivers, and culture that is full and vibrant. And you almost start to, you romanticize the island to the point where it becomes almost like it was a fantasy, like we lived in a fantasy. Of course, when we were living there, we didn't see that. We see the Hawaii and the hard work. But I think that it is, I've been living out of Dominica for many years, but I'm very much Dominican to the bone, to steal a phrase from the Trinis. And it infiltrates my work in ways that I don't even expect. So I will, when I'm writing, somewhere along the line, a character may end up picking a mango, or
well, that's not unexpected.
Yeah, or a little patois or a Creole might come out,
right.
Or I would say even my science fiction, because I have one sci-fi novel that's been on the burner for the last 25 years, but it's based off of the idea of Black people escaping a form of colonialism and racism. So they're leaving Earth because of the racism and the oppressive systems, entrenched racism and racial institutionalized racism that they faced on Earth, and they're trying to escape to their own planet. Taking along the tenets and the how should I say, the principles of Marcus Garvey, that the Black man should have his own land, he should have his own businesses, his own empire. So I think as a Caribbean person and as a Dominican person, everything that I write somehow becomes instilled with my Dominicanness, in small ways, in minute ways, maybe even in the way I turn a phrase or I write my sentences. It's probably a result of my Caribbean British upbringing. So, so it is in everything, I think, that I write. Yeah. So in some way or form.
Awesome. In your writing process, how do you balance world building and character development, especially in genres that like sci-fi fantasy that require extensive world building? How do you
balance the two? So I think it's what we do in every form of writing. Our characters are shaped and influenced by their environment. World building is no different. As I said, putting Black people on a colony in space is perhaps the same as taking a Caribbean immigrant and dropping them in New York. Where they have come from will shape them. What their goals and their expectations of the future will shape them, and their present circumstances will shape them. So you have character development that is built off of the world they came from, the world they want to go to, and the world that they're in right now. Okay. They are intricately linked. And there is, to go back to your question, one is dependent on the other. The character development is dependent on the world building. And sometimes that's even a physical manifestation, because Dune by Frank Herbert, very popular novel. It was the first sci-fi novel I ever read. It changed my life. Dune on planet Arrakis. I hope I'm saying that right. The Fremen are shaped by the spice of the world. It changes the color of their eyes, the way that they breathe, the way that their culture is built. and operates, their hierarchy in terms of ruling, their leadership, their philosophy on life is all shaped by the planet and the severe and hard conditions of the planet. And when the protagonist, who is Paul, is introduced into this world, he too goes through character development and change because of the physical environment of the planet, as well as the cultural shock.
Right.
So, as I said, they're physical changes that take place in characters that is based off the environment that they're introduced to. And then there's emotional development that takes place as a result of the different things that happen to them along the way. So the ideal thing is that your character should not be the same person at the beginning of the novel as he was in the beginning of the novel. At the end of the novel, there should be some sort of trajectory of growth in some way. Sometimes it's towards being a more positive person, positive developments, and sometimes it's towards the negative. It all depends.
This is great, because this actually sort of took up part of the next question I had in mind, but this speaks to real life as well, right? Because we are all changed somehow the older we get. So that makes perfect sense.
I'm glad.
Because the next question I had in mind was, how do you not lose the human touch? But clearly, you keep that going, and in terms of
the emotional life of your character will always keep them human, as long as you remember that this is not a one-dimensional character that you're writing, that this is someone who has hopes, dreams, flaws, failures, triumphs, even your antagonist. And I think especially your antagonist. I know that one of the things I'm struggling right now with in my sci-fi epic, and why it's been on the shelf for 25 years, is because my antagonist still feels very one-dimensional to me. And that's not a human. That's a character. That's a cartoon.
Right.
So, writers, remember, your antagonist should also have an emotional life. It may be that their principles or their perspective is off morally, but they too have flaws, triumphs, goals, challenges, so
very correct. I think the antagonist requires a lot more work than the protagonist in terms of the character.
And I enjoy writing antagonists. I do like,
because they really drive the narrative, right? It's really a villain that makes it a success, right?
I think it's funny because when we think of Star Wars, you might not necessarily think of Luke Skywalker first. Ben or Obi-Wan Kenobi. Did I say that right? I'm not sure. Or Princess Leia. Who do we all know? Darth Vader.
Exactly.
Right.
And which it's always baffled me that just to jump off for a little bit, the way Star Wars is done, I think it's a little, I don't know if it's strange, but I find it a bit odd that, on one hand, they say that what they call them, the lightsaber people,
the Jedi.
The Jedi are one with the Force. I lost their name for a second. They are one with the Force, and they are, they're the good guys, but yet they failed to see who the real villain was.
No. I would have to disagree with you there, because the real villain hid his intentions, and skillfully so, and hid behind Vader, right? So the real villain, in case anybody has not seen Star Wars, I don't know how that's possible, but just in case, the real villain hides behind Vader.
Well, yeah, that is true. No, I get that.
Yeah. So, and I mean, and Vader himself did not start off as a villain. So by the time he evolved, his character development took him down that path. There were people who already had invested their trust in him as, as an up and coming Jedi and all of that.
Yeah.
Right. So they looked to him as a sort of light.
Right.
You can't always. And I'm sure you probably find that in your own life, you can't always see the degradation that's happening inside of a person, which, unfortunately, by the time it comes out, it may be even too late to help them, and then you're dealing with a different kind of situation.
Well, that is true, I guess, and even if you may have a villain in your life and you don't even know it.
Yeah, I mean, within families, even you have people who are. I mean, I've had friends who say sometimes on Facebook, like I did everything for this person, I took care of their kids, I sent them money and all this kind of thing. And, and they turn around and back talk to me and I can't believe it.
Mm-hmm. So I guess you're right. I never looked at it that way.
That show, I think, has kind of lost its way with all of the
I don't know.
And all of that stuff.
I just think that
I like the original 3.
I just think that because there was so much one with the Force that they should have been able to tell something.
Yeah, I mean, you might have shown a plot hole right there. So
yeah. Anyway, let's get back to you. You don't want to get too far past that. So we've discussed character believability is important. It's important to you, and it should be important to writers as well, even if you are writing fiction. So, do you draw any parallels between the investigative skills that you used as a journalist and how you research or develop plots for your fiction writing?
So I would have to say no. I am what you call a pantser. So there's in writing, there's plotters and pantsers. So pantsers are people who they fly by the seat of their pants. So I have technically only done research for maybe 1 or 2 projects. Most of my books are just out of my imagination and just sort of following a storyline very organically. Ladder of the Gods, which is one of my murder mysteries, is probably the most researched book that I've done. And that was because I was dealing with a culture that I wasn't familiar with, which was Dutch Caribbean. So I decided to do a bit of research. And even my research for that is very superficial. I mean, I don't delve very deeply into the culture, but I knew that I didn't know anything about them. And I wanted to find out a little bit about the colonial background and history of the Dutch Caribbean. So I incorporated bits and pieces of my research into the book. But that's the only one I can say that I've actively researched. Everything else is just sort of me just being very free flow, free form, and organic with the imagination.
Although I will say that even if you're a pantser, you sometimes still have to research, especially if you're writing something that's outside of your.
Most definitely,
which that is me as well. I mean, when I begin, I get the idea, and then the story writing itself, I have nothing to do with it. It just so don't blame me.
Okay.
When you read my work, don't blame me. It's not me, it's the story that writes itself. Okay?
Yeah, there you go. Yep.
But so how, and we've talked about your faith and a little bit about morality and so on. But how in your themes of morality, hope, you mentioned redemption, the plays is important. How do you make your readers see that in, say, a sci-fi novel?
Okay.
Yeah.
I do not necessarily. Okay, the one thing I try not to do is to beat them over the head with my faith. I am not here to shove my Bible into the work that I'm giving to you. I think that it seeps into the work through character development and who the characters are and how they grow as people. I think I also tend to deal a lot with themes of redemption. That really seems to be a theme that runs through a lot of my work organically, I might add. I don't sit down with the thought that I'm going to write this story about a man who does something bad, and at the end, he comes to Christ. He has a conversion experience. My work starts very much with the seed of an idea. It's like this man walks into a bank and he makes a decision that that his mother is dying and needs medical aid and he needs this money, so he's going to rob the bank. Now, the story arc may take him through to a position where he realizes that what he has done is wrong, illegal, and morally, and that he needs to turn himself in and maybe even serve his time. And during his time in prison, he may then realize that, he needs God and he needs to change his life and all of that sort of stuff. But it happens very, very much as part of the story process. And it is not something that I necessarily sit down and think about. So sometimes what will happen is I will write a story and I will think to myself, I'm not sure what my message is in this story. I don't know what my themes are coming out of this story. And if you can't do that, if you write a story and you don't know what it is you are trying to tell your reader, you have a problem. So you need to know that when you're writing your story, that it is not just about point A to B to C to D. There has to be a foundation, a message, a theme that you're trying to get across to your reader.
Like a moral of the story kind of thing.
Something to that effect. When I think where we tend to get overboard with that is when we write for kids. And what I've discovered during this process is that children don't want to be moralized.
Right.
They don't want their storybooks to be another textbook or another Sunday school, storybook. They want to be invested in a character. They want to feel what that character is feeling. They want to root or support that character, and they want to see that character achieve their goals at the end of the story. The last thing they need to hear is "Thou shalt not."
Yeah.
So, and I try not to do that in my work. I think it should be obvious that if a character makes an immoral decision or a bad decision, there will be a consequence for that. But at the same time, there could also be a redemptive arc for that person. And it flows naturally with the story. It doesn't feel forced and it doesn't feel unnatural. It doesn't feel like it doesn't belong in the story. So
okay. Yeah. Certainly. Looking at the world we are in today and being an author or writer, whichever would you prefer, where do you see your writing going? The advent and the explosion.
Okay.
And I want to explain my question. That's why I'm taking this time. The explosion of AI or artificial intelligence when it comes to writing. And I know a lot of writers, authors are very frightened, very concerned about this. And so does that affect you personally, or do you think it will affect you? How do you see it affecting your own writing?
I think that the authors and who are scared of the proliferation of AI have cause to be concerned.
We should be scared.
I wouldn't say scared, I say concerned. And the reason I say concerned is because having taken a look at ChatGPT myself for other projects, you can literally have ChatGPT write you a book. And that and you're talking about within a minute or two. Now, as an author who, you struggle to come up with ideas, you struggle to figure out what your characters should say, who they should be, what is the plot, there's a lot that goes into writing that takes a long time, years in some cases.
Right.
Now you have this tool that can basically, in theory, do what you do in a matter of minutes. Yeah, it is very concerning. It makes you wonder, is there going to be a market for your book? But that said, I think that there is. I think that there's room for both. I think if you look at an AI-produced story, to me, I feel I can tell the difference. There's I don't think the technology is quite there yet to create masterpieces in novel writing.
Right.
I think it's still very basic, and I think you can spot errors, whether it's grammatical or otherwise. You can spot errors. They don't take the time. The AI doesn't take the time to character build. It doesn't necessarily give you settings and show you the relationship between the characters and the settings. It will give you a setting, and it will tell you what the character is doing in the setting, but not necessarily how the character is impacted by the setting.
Right. That's
something a human writer can do.
Exactly.
So we're not exactly going to be replaced. And, I don't want to preempt the panel discussion, but my opinion is we're not there yet where we need to be running around screaming bloody murder because, AI can write. In my work, what I use AI for is to create images that illustrate my work, because I do I do audio video versions of my stories for my YouTube channel. That's how I'm trying to differentiate myself in the marketplace. So I use Leonardo AI and these sort of things. I have played around with ChatGPT and sort of asking it, how would you resolve this character's dilemma? And I've looked at the solutions it's presented with me, and they're fine. It doesn't feel right to me to incorporate that into my work. So I'll use ChatGPT to create maybe a query letter or an invitation to a book launch. I do not use it for writing my stories. It does not work for me in that way. Even asking it to come up with ideas for something that I'm struggling with, it might, very rarely have I ever been able to use something that is brought up to me. It still doesn't know my brain and how my mind works. So it can't really put me on the track that I, Nicole Georges-Bennett, need to go on. So if you're a beginning writer and you're maybe struggling with inspiration and you're like, okay, I would like to write a story. I don't know exactly what it is I want to write about. ChatGPT can give you like 10 ideas.
Right.
But I would not then ask ChatGPT to write the story. That to me is cheating. That's cheating. Now, I know that there are people who have written whole books using AI, or and I heard this very weird one I thought was very creepy, where you clone yourself, and maybe you know the technical things of it. You clone yourself, and then you have that write the book for you because it knows how your mind works because it's a clone of you. I'm not even sure the technical software how that is, but I actually heard somebody advocating this on to their listeners, their viewers on a podcast.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't actually heard that particular one where you can clone yourself and have your clone write for you.
Yeah.
It's digital, but that to me, that's probably even more frightening than somebody.
I'm way too old school for that.
I know, right? And I think that maybe upbringing, moral character and upbringing, I think those are the things that make the difference in people who would use AI as a research tool and versus those who would use it as their writer or as their ghostwriter. And I don't, as you rightly say, those AI tools have not developed to the point where they can actually be a ghostwriter. You know, they're just tools to assist with what you already have in your head or your mind or what you want to do, but they can't replace the human being. Even if you can use them to do complex things like sing a song.
Yeah,
I think that's okay. But as long as the words are yours, it's not an issue. I personally do not have any problem with AI per se. Well, I shouldn't say I don't have any problem. I have no issue with using it as a tool. However, I have concerns of how some people will choose to apply this tool because it will affect how it affects the rest of us. You know, like you say, the folks who've used AI to publish whole books or write whole books.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine those books being really good anyway. and as like you, I would be able to spot it almost instantly, both because of my technical background and as a writer. I can tell if a human being wrote something or if, just because, for one thing, the errors would be different, you know? So I just think we have to watch out for that kind of thing and make sure that we don't cross the line when we decide to use AI as a tool in whatever we do. All right. Anything else you would like to add that we didn't get to touch on? I think we are coming close to the end of today's author showcase, so I wanted to give you an opportunity to bring up anything that I didn't get to ask you or I forgot to ask you about, or you'd like to.
I think we've covered quite a lot. I'd just like to let everybody know that my books are available on Amazon.com. Most of them are also available as ebooks in Kindle, and I've got some audiobooks coming out as well, and they will be on Audible, I believe, .ca. Okay, so, well, for Audible, it would be Ladder of the Gods and Come Night.
Right.
So those two are available as Audible. So Ladder of the Gods is a murder mystery set in pseudo-Dutch Caribbean island, and Come Night is my teen or YA vampire novel. So
all right,
it was one of my favorites to write. So
yes. All right, so thank you. Excellent. All right, that's it, folks. Thank you once again for joining us on Author Showcase, part of the Write-Tukubuli Literary Virtual Festival. We are so glad you were able to join us, and we hope to see you on the next one.